Good evening to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook video for today, May 29th, 2024. It is a Wednesday. Not much going on today, but we're going to talk specifically about tropical waves because that is really the biggest thing that there is to talk about right now. And it's just evident right now that there's obviously not going on really. Next 7 days on the National Hurricane Center bulletin, nothing expected in the Atlantic. And in the Eastern Pacific, it remains the same case. And you can even take a look at the satellite loop in the Atlantic, kind of something we like to look at every single day just to kind of get an idea of what's going on. Good to see what's happening in real time. And in real time, there's really not much happening at all. Seems like there's a big extratropical system out here in the northern Atlantic. Probably won't do much or develop into anything at all. But you can clearly see that also there's a lot of strong westerly shear in the upper atmosphere. But there's also some tropical waves in the Atlantic. There's one in the Caribbean. This actually had quite a bit of interest yesterday because of how much convection it was producing. And a lot of people are really starting to question because of how strong and the magnitude of these tropical waves that we're beginning to see already. You could clearly see them if you look at the map. There's one in here, probably one also impacting the islands, and it'll probably bring some gusty winds and heavy rains to them. And then there's also another one, another wave in here in the western MDR, in the central MDR, and then it seems like there's been a wave that has just come off. And actually, I've got the graph to show it anyways. You can see the tropical waves. They've started a National Hurricane Center now analyzing 4 waves in the Atlantic, and they won't do much right now. But the reason why these waves are so important is because they're quite literally, and I keep on repeating this, and I may sound like a broken record, but they really are seeds for developing these potential storms, and we get a lot of them each year. We tend to get a lot of waves that come off of Africa, and most of the time they end up not being strong enough to really do much of anything, although sometimes they try. But eventually you'll get one of these lucky waves that eventually develops out here in the MDR and produces one of our classical long-tracked Cape Verde storms. Or not always, but sometimes that's where these storms originate from, is from these tropical waves. And even if these tropical waves don't develop out here in the MDR, especially in the earlier part of the season, they tend to help with formations in this area of the basin, usually helping aid some sort of Central American gyre setup. These tropical waves just tend to be the kind of kick that we need sometimes, besides just the seeds, the literal seeds, for the development of these tropical systems in the Atlantic. And you can see that they're pretty potent right now. Some of the convection dying off of some of these waves, I guess partially due to the nighttime diurnal minimum. But either way, some people are taking notes of how strong these waves are. I found this tweet pretty interesting from this guy named Hurricane Man on Twitter. And he mentions that these tropical waves are in a sinking air pattern. And we talked about this pretty often when it comes to rising air and sinking air in the MJO. And he's referring to this sinking air over Africa that we have right now. And he's mentioning that these tropical waves are happening in a sinking pattern in terms of that we have well-defined and strong tropical waves coming off of Africa. And he says this leads me to believe that they'll become stronger and more active as the season progresses into the peak months, which will help hand in hand with the very strong and the very quantity sum activity that is expected this season. And I could just show you further how defined these tropical waves are. You can see them very clearly on the 850 millibar vorticity, and you can see them by these pockets of energies. You can see, I'll just show this map again, you can see that there's this wave in the Caribbean, kind of got entangled in some sort of energy in Central America, although this won't really do much of developing at all. But you could especially see it with these waves. Hold on, where's the map? Right here. These waves in the MDR. You can see it quite literally. Pockets, small pockets, and not very strong, but they're still there. There are pockets of energy. That's literally what these waves are. Once again, they're pockets of energy that you could see. The one near the Caribbean islands, and then there's one in the central MDR, and then there's one coming off. Once again, it'll play a huge factor into helping the development of systems, not only in the MDR, but in the Atlantic in general, because sometimes, once again, if these waves don't develop out here, sometimes they sneak up on us in the Western Atlantic, or sometimes they even go on to help storms develop in the Pacific. That's how much these waves traverse too. They really play a big part into the Pacific development as well, especially in the early season. But it doesn't seem like any of these waves will develop right now. It is only May, and these waves aren't particularly strong yet, even though they are definitely stronger than what we would expect for this time of year. But it's going to be interesting to watch these waves over the next several weeks as they continue to progress off of Africa. Now that it seems like the African wave train, as we like to call it, has begun for this hurricane season. And things will definitely get very interesting over the next several weeks. But if we take a look at the modeling right now, at least with the GFS, just taking it out to the next 5 days, you could already see not much happening. Some sort of area of vorticity gets going in the Caribbean. Doesn't seem to be really much of any sort of big concern, however. This does kind of consolidate, or try to consolidate at least, as it gets into the subtropics. Doesn't really look all that defined, and I'm not seeing a lot of people talking about this. Maybe this could be another one of those non-tropical lows that we've seen, and we've also seen just last week, I believe, that maybe try to develop. But bottom line, nothing really looking too crazy or too eye-popping in terms of development occurring in the Atlantic very soon. Still very quiet, but it's once again very interesting that we have very strong tropical waves right now in the Atlantic for May, and that is certainly a sign of how the atmosphere is preparing itself for what it seems like will be a very active hurricane season coming up. Sound like a broken record saying all these things, but it just seems so confident. It just seems so certain at this point that that's the picture that we're looking at. There's really nothing much else to say. Nothing much else to say in that part, and also with today's video, since we really don't have much going on. Once again, the Atlantic is expected to stay quiet for the next foreseeable future, and hopefully enjoy it while it lasts. That's what I'll say for sure, definitely. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share with family and friends, all that good stuff. Stay safe, peace, love, and kindness to all, and we'll talk again tomorrow.